On December 14, 1799, a patient at Mount Vernon was actively suffocating. He was struggling for every gasp of air, terrified, but his mind remained sharp. He was attended to by three of the most elite physicians in America, Dr. James Craik and Dr. Gustavus Richard Brown, both rigorously trained at the prestigious University of Edinburgh, and a younger physician, Dr. Elisha Cullen Dick, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. They delivered the absolute best medical care the 18th century had to offer. And they killed him, they tortured him, drained him of his blood, and burned his skin until he died of shock and suffocation. Welcome to Diagnosed History, where we pull the medical charts of the past to understand the pathology of the human story. Today we aren't just analyzing how George Washington died. We're dissecting a deadly psychological trap that doctors, generals, and politicians still fall into today. We call it the heroic intervention. Let's review the patient's timeline. Age, 67. On December 12, 1799, Washington rode his estate for 5 hours in freezing rain and snow. Famously punctual, he sat down for dinner without changing his wet clothes. By 2 a.m. on December 14th, he woke up unable to speak, struggling for air and panicking. The emergency was real. His doctors arrived, armed with the most respected peer-reviewed medical consensus of the day. But their entire scientific model was built on a deadly fallacy. For centuries, medicine was governed by humoral theory, the belief that human health was dictated by the perfect balance of 4 liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. By the late 1700s, this had evolved into an aggressive philosophy called heroic medicine. Championed by famous physicians like Benjamin Rush, heroic medicine argued that violent diseases required violent, aggressive cures. They believed severe illness was caused by extreme vascular tension and overstimulation. To Craik and Brown, Washington wasn't suffering from a localized infection. His entire system was in a state of lethal high pressure. Their only solution was to aggressively deplete the system to force a reset. Over just 12 hours, they bled the president 4 separate times. They drained a shocking 80 ounces, or 5 pints, of blood. This was roughly 40% of his entire blood volume. They literally drained away the red blood cells his suffocating tissues desperately needed to carry oxygen. Next, they used counter-irritation. Believing the body could only handle one major inflammation at a time, they crushed toxic Spanish fly beetles and applied the paste directly to his neck, causing agonizing chemical burns to draw out the internal swelling. Finally, the internal flush. They administered heavy doses of calomel, a toxic mercury compound, and a tartar emetic to induce violent vomiting and diarrhea. The result? A clinically exhausted, exsanguinated patient battling severe dehydration and mercury poisoning. Their diagnostic model was generalized airway inflammation. But modern epidemiology tells a very different story. A complete chart review points to acute bacterial epiglotitis, most likely caused by the bacteria Haemophilus influenzae type B, or Hib. This is a specific aggressive bacterial infection that targets the epiglottis, the small trapdoor over your windpipe. It rapidly swells until it becomes a deadly cork. Historically, this was a terrifying childhood disease with a high mortality rate. But here is the medical learning point. You rarely see this today. In the 1980s, the introduction of the Hib conjugate vaccine wiped out over 95% of these cases. Today, epiglotitis is incredibly rare, mostly popping up in unvaccinated individuals or immunocompromised adults. And modern treatment doesn't involve beetles or bleeding. It involves 2 steps: secure the airway, usually by intubation or a tracheotomy, and administer heavy IV antibiotics like ceftriaxone. This is the great tragedy of Washington's death. The youngest doctor in the room, Dr. Dick, recognized this was a mechanical blockage. He pleaded with the senior doctors to let him perform a tracheotomy, cutting a hole in Washington's windpipe so he could breathe. The senior doctors, loyal to their outdated heroic medicine, refused. They chose to continue depleting an already destroyed system. Washington died not of his infection, but because his caregivers violently destroyed his body's ability to fight it. This leads us to our core predictive pattern, the trap of heroic intervention. Heroic medicine technically died out in the 19th century, but the psychology behind it is alive and well. When humans face a high-stakes crisis, our inherent bias is, don't just stand there, do something. We equate aggressive action with effective care. We see this repeated constantly. In modern medicine, it's the overprescription of broad-spectrum antibiotics for viral infections, breeding deadly superbugs because doctors feel pressured to act. It's putting terminal patients through agonizing, futile rounds of aggressive chemotherapy instead of providing palliative care that would actually extend their quality of life. We even see it in economics, where central banks aggressively pump liquidity into broken markets, attempting to cure the symptom while ignoring the disease. The lesson of George Washington's death is universal. If your foundational model is flawed, applying a more aggressive intervention won't cure the patient. It will just kill them faster. What do you think is our greatest modern-day heroic intervention? Leave your diagnosis in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The clinic is closed for today.